Okay, so I'm going to talk a bit about some of the gems, I guess, I've collected along the way as my work as a therapeutic counsellor. Just to, to remind you though, what we've done today is we've kind of taken the client's journey through the Gamblers Help System, and we've ended up with financial counselling, therapeutic counselling, and maybe both of those. And yeah, Pam's just talked about the financial counselling, and I'll talk a little bit about the therapeutic counselling. And as you know, Vicky's talked a lot about assessment and case formulation. That, in my mind, is actually a good assessment, and case formulation is very therapeutic in itself. And I was think if you can write a good case formulation or summary and share that with the client, that's a really good starting point, because you create a single point of focus and you say to the client, does that resonate with you? Does that feel right with you? Do you feel like, you've been understood, and what would you like to work on first? Or, and so you've got this you're creating a collaborative working alliance. And there was a couple of extra handouts I added to Vicky's handouts, which was a case formulation, cognitive behavioural therapy, therapeutic case formulation, and also an acceptance and commitment case formulation. So that may or may not be your mode of working. If that isn't, you can find your own case formulation to suit your style. But yeah, okay. I'm going to talk a bit about, as I said, a couple of gems that I found along the way with intervention, and at the end just touch on self-care, which is so important in this work. So some frameworks for treatment that I found very useful are the stages of change. Is everyone familiar with that? Yep. Everyone? Anyone not? No? Good. Perspective taking, which is... Yes, so that's right. Thank you for pointing that out. Sorry, I probably just deleted that off. So that relates to the stages of change, which I'll talk about. So sorry, that's just a little error on my slide. Perspective taking, which is an old idea, but it's been renewed again by a guy named Mark Lewis, who actually spoke at our conference. Did anyone get to come to our conference? Yeah. Did you see Mark Lewis speak? Yeah, it was fantastic. So I'll speak a little bit about that. If everyone gets a chance to read his book, I highly recommend it. Yeah, great. And Blashinsky's pathway model, which Vicky alluded to before. So I won't talk too long about the stages of change, because you're all familiar with that model. But what I will say, and this relates to your Miller and Rolnick question, is how you gauge what you're going to do in treatment relates to where the client is in that stage of change cycle. So in the pre-contemplative or contemplative stage, the overall aim is to increase the client's awareness and conviction, and motivational interviewing is very good for that. Pie of energy is a technique I use which describes how the client spends their energy now and how they would like to spend their energy in the future. I think inviting family members in from the start, if you feel comfortable working with other family members or with couples, is a very, very good thing to do. It has benefits along the whole way. So if you haven't got those skills, I would encourage you to develop some of those skills. And some psychoeducation, and again, I'll refer back to Mark Lewis's idea about addiction being a deep learning process as opposed to a disease. It's destigmatising, and it actually makes a lot of sense. So in the motivational interviewing, I know it's more than just a decisional balance, but the decisional balance is very handy to use. It's a really good thing that makes sense, and it really does help the client get a big picture awareness about what's going on for them and how their gambling's impacting their lives. So then the client moves into the determination or preparation stage, and at this point, therapeutically, it's good to set some goals, and also maybe some practical strategies such as making it harder to access money, getting the client involved in some kind of recreation, getting support again. If you've already got family members in, you've already got that support happening, so that's a good thing. And I'll speak about self-exclusion in a sec, but just to go back to the goal setting, and actually check this out with Mark Lewis himself, this technique that I've been using a long time with clients, which is called Design Your Life, which is a neuro-linguistic programming technique, and it involves dividing the client's life up into different sections, such as, you know, career, education, relationships, etc., and under each of those setting goals, but writing them as though you're a year down the track and you're reflecting on those goals that you've achieved. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I can, it's worth looking up. That's a really good technique, and he was very pleased that I've been using that, so that was very validating. But you can use, that's just one goal setting technique. There are many, and you might find your own, and I do encourage you to, you know, develop your own style, which I'm sure you have and will continue to do. So just in terms of self-exclusion, we have 4 programs going, and the Australian Hotel AHA, or Australian Hotels Association program, and the Clubs Vic deal with pokies in Victoria. So they do both pretty much do the same thing. So you can refer someone that has a gambling addiction with pokies to either of those 2 services. Bet care with the horse racing and greyhound racing and TAB issues, gambling issues, and then Crown Casino have their own program. For all of those programs, if you've got a client that is going to self-exclude, I'm highly recommending you helping that client, holding their hand, going into Crown with them if you can. I know it's a big ask, but it's very worthwhile because it's quite daunting, especially, well, all of them can be, but especially Crown is very daunting for clients, and it can be, you know, they might just not go through with it because. Yeah, but if you can go with them, that is great. Pardon? Well, it's just having gone through, because it's a life ban, whereas the others are only like 6 or 12-month bans that client nominates, I think, or up to 2 years. Crown is life, so they make it daunting because it's of the seriousness of it, and also there's fines involved if it's breached, or the client won't get their money if they happen to have a win. So it's worth just supporting the client through that process of self-exclusion.
It's been a main social point for them to give it up then for the rest of their lives.
That's right. That's right. And also going into Crown, just a sec. Yeah, going into Crown is actually, if you're vulnerable, if that's where you've been gambling and losing all your money, that's to self-exclude. If you've got this daunting process to go to, as opposed to go and gamble, which has been a fun thing, it's very confronting for people. So
how long does that interview process then take?
it takes about an hour, half an hour to an hour. And there's signing of deeds and.
So you have to make an appointment?
Yes. Make an appointment for all of them. You make an appointment. And sometimes, I know with AHA and Clubs Vic, they will come to you, they can come to your service if you organise it. So the Bet Care one is actually run from Sydney, so they can't come, but So,
Okay.
hang on, sorry. Yeah.
Like if I got something that I don't understand, if the client already do the self-exclusion, he going to the client, he win some money. Once they go in there, change those things to the money, they were gonna record his name, and then they find out that this client is self-exclusion, so he won't get the money that he wins, right?
That's right.
Will he get back the money that he
Brought?
used? Yeah, he bought.
I don't know, actually. That's a good question. I
Yeah.
don't know. I would think so, but who knows?
Yeah.
You're in a very vulnerable situation. In that, yeah.
So
We can-
a client of mine said he's put himself down, but he can still go there and play.
No, you can't. You're not allowed in the gambling area at all.
Well, how does he get in?
Well, he's breaching his deed. I mean, that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
he's reading it,
happens.
But because he's like, oh, it doesn't work.
Yep.
I still get in.
Yep.
So, like with
Yep.
his permission, would there be a role for me to? Like,
Yes,
someone
that is
who's
such a
like-
good question. I'm
like-
so glad you've
Because
done.
he wants to stop,
Yeah.
like it's just compulsory.
Yeah.
He can't, and he wants
So-
up there. But
so-
he's like, it just doesn't work. I still get in.
Yep. So what I've done this year, part of my work has been writing some clinical guidelines, and I would please all look these up on the website, the clinical guidelines, and part of those clinical guidelines cover self-exclusion, and that is one area that because I've wrote an original self-exclusion guidelines, and then I've added a bit to cover that question about what to do. So there are good clear lines about how to follow up and report. Yeah, that's right. Yep. Okay. So in terms of now moving along the stages of change, the client's in the early action stage. The idea here is to develop their self-efficacy. That is their belief that they can make the changes necessary to take back control over their gambling and achieve other good things in their life. Relapse prevention, and also consider Blashinsky's learning pathway. So part of early action is part of treatment, I guess, is understanding what's been driving the addiction, which is what I guess the assessment will help you to do that, and then developing a new pathway that it doesn't involve gambling, that the client can start following to help develop good gains in their life. That's basically what Mark Lewis says in his book too. And so, so Blashinsky's learning pathway helps you understand what types of learning might have happened, and so you can work with, that will help the client understand about how they came to where they're at. So, and then the maintenance phase again, reflection and perspective taking, reflect on clients' lives, connect their past to their present conundrum, imagine a future very different from the present. And so the maintenance phase is really pursuing that different future or different pathway. Determining the underlying purpose of the addiction, we humanise what might at first glance appear to be irrational and absurdly harmful behaviour. And that's very validating and normalising for the client. Okay, so the Blashinsky's pathways. Who knows about Blashinsky's pathways model here? Nobody? That's okay. So this is a really good model. I'm sorry that I'm doing it in the last 5 minutes, but there's a lot of literature on this, but I'll try and give you a good thing. So essentially what Blashinsky is saying is that gamblers aren't a generic group. They come to gambling through different learning. The first learning is, for first group, if you like, or pathway, are people that have come from a culture of gambling, like it might be part of their family entertainment, and they have maybe had a big win, and so they've been behaviourally rewarded. And so the pattern's been reinforced by social introduction, and yeah, as I said, they might have had an early big win, and and they've tried to repeat that fun behaviour, and they've learnt, they've developed a gambling problem through in this way. So in terms of the treatment for this group, psychoeducation and cognitive behavioural treatment regarding beliefs about winning and managing urges, exploding myths, financial management and recovery from debt. Now this group are usually the easiest to treat. So the second pathway, which follows on from that pathway, this group are referred to as emotionally vulnerable. And so these people have also come to gambling with pre-existing mental illness or sort of a trauma history. And so gambling for them takes away the pain. So it negatively is negatively reinforced, reinforces their gambling behaviour. So this is how they've developed their gambling addiction, or how it's become more entrenched. So for these people, treatment involves identifying and treating the triggers, the history or developmental issues, addressing the history or developmental issues, and helping them self-regulate, emotionally self-regulate, as well as protective financial management. And then the last pathway is the antisocial impulsive spectrum, and this group or this pathway also bring to gambling a personality style or biological disposition to gambling. So they're more impulsive, they might have had childhood ADHD, they tend to be high risk takers. And this group are often the most difficult to treat. So again, financial protection, short and long term, maybe medication for this group. Any questions? No? Okay. So behaviourally conditioned, this is some thoughts about treatment. If you use a cognitive behavioural approach, you would look at cognitive distortions, such as I think I've got an edge here. I'm a smart person, and I think I can win. A whole lot of things that sometimes you have to dig really deep to find. And controlled desensitisation to gambling associated stimulate, psychoeducation about decision making and chasing losses. The emotionally vulnerable group, you build on those things that you worked with the first group, but also raise awareness about mood escaping behaviour. And a psychoeducation may include assertiveness training, problem solving, some stress management, and managing the coexisting problems. Often trauma, from my experience. There's often trauma with this client group. And antisocial impulsive gamblers, again, you've built on the work that you've done in the previous two groups, but you also attend to problems related to attention and organisational deficits, impulse control, as I said, medication, and treating coexisting problems. So these are the sort of numbers that people can ring, the website. These are some other programs which are really great to refer to, because they can work very well alongside therapeutic counselling. So Garby Byrne runs a Free Yourself program. That's a voluntary program, which is a social program where people have a chance to, reinvent themselves, I guess. And she's just done some really good research looking at how volunteers move through a change process that's to get them out of that whole change cycle. And so volunteering for, if people are interested in that, that's a good option in terms of if they're sort of in that action stage or moving into that maintenance stage of moving out of that whole cycle. Peer connection program, which involves speaking to peers. Respin, Gamblers Anonymous. So there's many different ways to help, which is what our slogan is. And you can use your own discretion about what might work for the clients you're working with. And support and resources for you. So, as I said, the professionals page, and this is where you'll find the clinical guidelines. Also in the clinical guidelines are some guidelines around supervision. We pay services to pay for your supervision. So you should be getting good supervision that you need. You need it. It's absolutely essential because you are working with complex clients, and that is, you can't help being affected by that. You will definitely get vicarious trauma if you don't get the right support you need and you don't look after yourselves. So this is the website. So this is the Gamblers Help website, and on our website we've got a whole lot of resources that will support you. You know, so this, like today, we're filming today, and we will put these videos on the website for you to watch if you want to refresh, or if your team are interested in looking at some best practice. But also there's the clinical guidelines, which I talked about, which talk about, self-exclusion, model of care, but also supervision and what has to happen. Your supervisors have to be registered, you know, and appropriate to meet your CPD needs. Okay, so I can't say it. It's so important. Your self-care is so important, and you know, take the time and be a good role model for your clients. You know, do exercise or eat well or do what you need to do. Get proper good supervision. You know, everything you need to do to look after your own health, because it's really important. Anyway, thank you so much.